Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to a joint North Star Journey Live and Sahan Community Live event. I'm Brandt Williams, a senior editor at NPR News, and I'm co-hosting this community conversation with Alberto Villafan, the digital producer at Sahan Journal. We're diving into an important conversation about how to rebuild a life in Minnesota after incarceration. Now, there are thousands of Minnesotans who have spent time behind bars, away from their families and communities, and this distance can change a person physically, mentally, and spiritually. So today we'll be talking about what it's like for the more than 4,000 men and women who will come home from Minnesota prisons this year.
Yes, and we have a group of folks here with us tonight, including formerly incarcerated individuals and other community advocates, ready to discuss all the challenges of reentry. So let me introduce our panelists. First off, we have Antonio Williams, the executive director of Tone Up, a grassroots organization empowering formerly incarcerated individuals. Thank you for being here. Can we welcome? Thank you so much for being here, Antonio.
Thank you for having me.
Left, we have Rhea Smith, a Women's Recovery Service Program Coordinator in a government agency. It's great to have you with us tonight.
All right.
Next up, we have Erick Washington. Erick is a co-founder of the Kingsman Project and a mentor in the District of Minnesota Reentry Court.
All right.
Next, we have James Becker. James is the assistant federal defender and also a federal defender in the District of Minnesota Reentry Court.
All right.
Last but not least, we have David Riley. David is a substance use counselor at R.S. Eden, an addiction treatment center in St. Paul.
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis?
Minneapolis.
Thank you for the correction. Thank you all so much for joining us.
So let's start off with our first question. Let's obviously, we have Antonio, Rhea, and Erick, who have all spent time incarcerated. We know incarceration, it doesn't just happen. And we've probably seen that in the media, we tend to focus only on the conviction part. But obviously, there are a lot of factors that play a role when somebody spends time in prison. Antonio, I want to start with you. Just how do you tell the story of that chapter in your life?
Yeah. My experience is mine, and mine alone. But for me, it started with my childhood. It started with my parents being incarcerated, right? It started with me going through the foster care system, juvenile detention, shelters, group homes, before the age of 13, right? Having cuffs, plastic handcuffs put on me as a child when I acted out in school. My journey didn't just start with my adult conviction and when I entered the adult system. But that journey there was a result of the trauma that I experienced growing up, the trauma I witnessed my parents go through, my brothers and sisters. There's about 15 of us. 6 of us entered the foster care system. And so when I think about my path towards, committing the crime that I committed, harming someone, taking a life, which is very serious, I think about the life that was squeezed out of me as a kid.
Yeah.
I think about those parts of me that weren't loved and the parts of myself that I didn't even love and never got to know or experience because I was dealing with all levels of abuse that you could imagine. So, yeah, that's my experience.
Thank you so much for sharing that with
Yeah.
us. Rhea.
Yes.
Thank you. Rhea, I understand you spoke at your commencement ceremony from Metro State University last December, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. And there you talked about spending time in the Hennepin County Jail fighting a drug possession charge and then transferring to the Minnesota Correction Facility in Shakopee. Can you tell us what you wanted your classmates to know when you spoke at this graduation?
So similar to Antonio, I think both of our, childhoods seem to be almost the same story. So being in Hennepin County, fighting multiple drug charges, actually, it was not an unfamiliar place to me, as I spent pretty much the majority of my youth in one detention center or another. However, in that scenario, I had a daughter on the other side. So I was going through the worst. It had to have been the worst time of my life. I didn't. My daughter was taken while I was incarcerated because the prosecutor wanted me to tell them something that I did not want to tell them, and I didn't sleep for 6 days. Yeah, I had to be medicated to go to sleep. So that was my experience, and I talked about this during my commencement, but I also talked about that being a turning point for me and a rebirth, because I decided whatever happened after that, whether I was going into a federal prison or state prison, because I didn't know. My bail was $1 million. I was facing serious charges, and by the grace of God, I did get shipped to Shakopee and was able to attend the challenge incarceration program, and my time was cut. My time inside was cut pretty short, so I only did 2 years. But I just, made a promise to myself that no matter what I had to go through, once I got on the other side, that I wasn't going back. So, yeah.
Rhea, thanks for that. To Erick, in 2009, you started serving a sentence. What was going on in your life before then, and what happened when you went in to prison?
What was happening before? Just dysfunction, not being disciplined, making wrong choices. And I can sum that up with drugs. When that cocaine kind of epidemic thing hit here, I was right in there. And I never got a drug charge, right? And I did drugs for many years, did many treatments, but I believe what was going on with me was just the drug usage, and it got out of control. I didn't know what I was doing, man. I was smoking crack and unlike my brother and my sister here, Tony and Rhea, I didn't learn that at home. I didn't get it at home. I had an all right childhood bringing up. My father wasn't in the house. I have 4 brothers. I had 3 brothers and 2 sisters. So what happened with me is I went out. Like I said, I didn't learn that at home. So I went out and found that myself. And when I got wrapped up in that cocaine, it was like a chokehold. And next thing you know, it's 10 years later. Next thing you know, it's 15 years later. Next thing you know, it's 10 treatments. It's 12 treatments. You know what I mean? So what led me to prison was my drug usage. The drug usage got deep, out of control. So with the drug habit and the usage, I committed a crime to feed the habit. And up to that point, I got 1 felony. That 1 felony sent me to the penitentiary, and that was enough for me. Yes, I did about the same amount of time as Rhea did, and I was good. But the drug habit, I committed a crime, got caught on site immediately, you know what I mean? And that prison sentence pretty much changed my life, though. Probably the best thing that happened to me. Yeah. I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. James and David, both of you work to support people who have been incarcerated in Minnesota. When you're meeting with someone for the first time after they've emerged from prison, they've been secluded from society, what are you asking them? What are you listening for? How are you helping them re-enter?
Yeah, thank you. And just quickly, thank you for putting this on. Thank you for creating a forum for this conversation. I mean, you talked at the beginning about the number of people that sort of fall into this category, yet I think we're all aware that these topics, these issues are really a mirror to the whole of society and really impacts all of us. As far as people returning to the community, I mean, I think that going into a meeting with someone who is just returning to the community, I think first and foremost, we need to just be as self-aware as possible. One thing that I think we all know about programs that are successful and people who are working in this field and getting good results is that, we got to pay attention to the fact that every person is unique, their journey is unique, their personality and all those things. And it means that where the gaps are for someone coming back out of prison is also going to be unique. And so to create something as individualized as possible. I think one of the most important critical components, of course, is simply listening. I mean, there's something about just fundamentally recognizing another human being that's transformative by itself. And so using that as a foundation, I think helps promote some of the other things that we'll be talking about today, because they already understand that there's some kind of paradigm shift going on here, and they're not being judged on a single metric or a single sort of incident in their life, oftentimes one of the worst days of their lives. And, I think most of us have heard before that we are not generally the people that we are on the worst days of our lives, yet they can continue to haunt people and hold them back. So, I'm saying a few generalities here, be self-aware in terms of how you're entering the conversation, be a listener, recognize someone's humanity. But beyond that, it's trying to get a handle on the community that they came from, because that's going to inform what they're returning into and what the challenges are, and to assess, what are the immediate needs to establish someone in a stable way before getting more ambitious and aspirational about some other goals for people re-entering the community. And I'll hit pause there.
Yeah,
All
David,
right.
You're up, sir.
All right. Well, when I first meet someone who's being released from prison, the first thing I want to do is I want to be transparent and tell them my why that I'm doing what I'm doing. I think it's important for me to be able to be transparent and vulnerable with them before I start asking them questions about themselves. And one of the ways that I connect with a lot of brothers that come out of prison is when I tell them my story. My story is similar to their stories. I come from a family where there was substance abuse in my home. My father was absent, and domestic violence and all of that. I also come from the crack epidemic. I'm 25 years clean and sober.
All right.
But thank God, I'm 25 years clean and sober, so I have the ability to relate to the brothers that are coming out of prison. They understand that I'm just like them. And so at that point, they know that they can be a little bit more transparent with me, because we can find some common ground, and they can tell me a little bit about their substance use or their time in prison. And not everybody's time in prison is the same. Some brothers come out of prison, they've spent the last year in solitary, and you might have somebody else that was in general population. Those are two different individuals when they are released. So just getting that kind of information. Also, what are the things that they want to work on? When you talk about individual treatment, what are those things that individually that the person wants to work on? Some brothers might want to work on immediately working on their identification, getting their credentials together, right? Some other brothers may want to come out and work on their mental health. I'm truly a proponent of mental health services for those people that are just coming out of prison. And in general, people that are dealing with substance use issues, I believe that there is a mental health component to that. So I encourage that often. So those are some of the things that I have a conversation with them about when they first are released from prison. And I say brothers because most of the people that I deal with are men. So
Right. Yeah. Well, David, thanks for that, and we'll talk more about mental health as we go on in our discussion. I'm going to come back to a question for James. I think a lot of us probably think that life gets so much better for people when they leave prison, but what are the challenges that you're trying to prepare people for when they're reentering the community?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I mean, I think that, there's some things that are fairly obvious. We talk about sobriety, housing, employment. Those are kind of building blocks to sort of the kind of life that we would wish for anyone. But, I think that even though for maybe many of the people watching or listening, those things are just sort of normal components of our lives, and we haven't spent a lot of time thinking about how that actually gets put together. When you start to break it down for someone who either hasn't had those things to begin with or has difficulties navigating the systems that provide those things, the impediments to getting a government-issued ID as a piece to get housing. We're not even at housing yet, but we're sort of at the preliminary stages of even putting yourself in a position to do those things. So, those go to sort of aspects of stability, establishing a platform for sort of more ambitious future successes. But I think beyond that, I think that frequently it seems as though there's a correlation between the length of time someone has spent in prison and under what conditions. I mean, I absolutely agree. Someone who's spent a chunk of that time in solitary confinement has a very different experience than someone who's in general population. But the duration of time that they've spent out of the community can have a direct impact on the kinds of challenges that they then face. That pulls in, I think, a few different directions. The most immediate, I think, is just family and loved ones, where that person has been outside of the reality that they've been living in.
Right.
And so the challenge of wanting to make up for missed time, the challenges of dealing with guilt, of being away and unavailable, the challenges of developing trust, that you're not going to go back to prison, things like that. There's a sort of a darker side to that as well, though. It's people from the neighborhood who remember you as you were and can drag you down. And trying to navigate that and make tough decisions about what kind of environment one deliberately and conscientiously puts together to prevent some of those risk factors can be, I think, surprising to people and unanticipated. So trying to sort of identify those things. The last thing I'll just say quickly, I know there's plenty of good people with plenty of good things to say here, but I think for people who are coming out of prison, oftentimes they've been thinking about that day for a long time. It's been living in their minds. And so when that day comes, I think there can be a real rush to hit the ground running, to be overly ambitious, to try to get too much done. And, we all know that, even the best laid plans go askew. Life intervenes as it does. But those little hiccups can derail someone immediately if it's not in line with what they'd been imagining for so many years. And so to give themselves patience, give themselves some grace. You can't be all things for all people when you come out of prison. It's necessarily a self-centered time, and it needs to be. So I think that's also something that people can be a little surprised by when the reality of coming back to the community meets what they've been imagining.
Right. And thanks, James, for that. We're going to be also asking some of our panelists about making those connections upon reentry. But as a reminder, I just want to let folks know, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to a community conversation from North Star Journey Live and Sahan Community Live. I'm NPR News Senior Editor Brandt Williams, here with Sahan Journal's digital producer Alberto Villafan, and we're talking about how to rebuild your life after incarceration. For the next question, I want to talk about, let's pose to some of our formerly incarcerated folks about conditions that obviously being incarcerated completely changes the way you live your life. And I'm going to start with Antonio. Just give us a sense. What's it like how being in prison changes the way you sleep, the way you eat? What are just some of the basics that you have to do as a person?
Yeah. Again, it's a little different for everyone based on how you do your time. I mean, the rules can vary from different facilities and all of that, right? And that impacts how you sleep, when you wake up, what recreational opportunities are available to you, what educational opportunities are available to you, all of the things. For me, I am one of those people who also spent consecutive years in segregation in my 14 years as well. You know, so I have that experience as well. So it's different for everyone. But for me, a lot of the things that were so hard to adjust to and things that you have to maneuver around and navigate is controlling yourself. And I'm sorry, I'm getting even emotional just even remembering it and talking about it.
Yes.
You know, you gotta use the bathroom in front of another man. You know, you can't, if you're having a bad stomach day, you can't kick them out the cell and say, hey, I need to take care of myself, right? So imagine those type of things, right? Just on a human level, right? You go to seg, isolation. I know in Rush City, you can only flush your toilet once every half hour. You can't control when you have to take a number 2, or you can only run your cold water once every 10 minutes. The lights, bright just like these, are on from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. I read a book, a CIA tactics book. This is actually tactics that the CIA used to get information from, right? So I named that to say I had to adjust. Not only that, but like, you know, there's options. You can eat the prison food that they serve you the 3 times a day at the oddest times, right? Breakfast is super early, and then like 3 hours later you have lunch, and then like 5 hours later you have dinner. So your last meal is at like 4:30. You don't eat again. If you don't have canteen, you don't have anyone sending you money, right? If you're working out to keep your mental, not just look good or feel, right? Your mental in order, your body is hungry, right? So you got somebody who's sending you money to help you, you know, buy canteen, or you go without. And that goes for all the basic products that you can use to take care of yourself. Deodorant, soap. If you don't, right? So this affects, when you come home, when I came home, I had to remind myself that I didn't have to be in crisis and scarcity anymore. I would save my soap and use the last little smudge, grimy little piece. Because I'm like, nah, I can't be wasting money like that. It's a real thing. My appetite, I had to adjust to, I can eat more, but my body didn't want to eat more. Like, I want to eat breakfast. My body won't let me eat breakfast because I'm so used to the routine, the hard-boiled eggs every Monday. Every Monday.
With oatmeal.
Right, oatmeal and right.
And cornbread.
Come on, and the little bread piece. So having to adjust to these things, I mean, not being touched, not being able to show affection, adjusting to being touched. I'm married now. You know, y'all can get that a round of applause.
Congratulations.
Right.
I'm married now, and you know, having to adjust to relationships, right? Intimacy, not just the physical intimacy, but the emotional intimacy. Being in a place where you have to shut that down. But I'm sorry, I know others may have some other things. I have a lot to say on that, but.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a lot, but there's the other part of it too, of like when you do get a cellie or a roommate, and maybe that person is on a whole different level than you are. Just what brought this up for me is just I've had some people living with me or coming to stay with me for a while from out of town, and I don't have space in my house, and it reminded me of like those moments where I just wanted to be alone for like 10 minutes, but I didn't have that option because my longest roommate never wanted to leave the cell. And so I remember like feeling very claustrophobic and like just burdened with this other person's problems and whatever they were going through, because it was a constant repeat of they were upset about why they were in prison and they were stuck in that place. So that was a repeat every day of hearing that over and over and over again. The other part for me that I struggle with the most right now is going in spaces where there are large amounts of people. I have had lots of anxiety attacks. The first time when I went to the Mall of America, I just was in a store and I had all this stuff in my hand and I just left it there and walked out because, I don't know, I just felt like I had to watch too many people. And I just, even still, I don't feel comfortable in those settings where I can't like control the environment. So those were probably the two biggest things for me to adjust to. And then I think that, always when you're in prison, you have to, like I said, kind of watch people because some people might try to sabotage you. I knew I was going to CIP and I saw other people, throw pills in their rooms and get them kicked off the list and things like that. So I had to keep that quiet and not talk about it and not talk about why I'm there. So you can't really open up to anybody, especially you don't know these people. So that's kind of plays into your relationships when you get out too, because it's like you're constantly trying to see what people's motives are. And it's frustrating, to say the least. So also some of the things that Antonio talked about, which is like you don't want to be wasteful because you remember what it's like to only have, only been making 25 cents an hour, and that bar of soap or whatever was a week's worth pay, So you want to hold on to things. And so I still deal with that.
When you first did come out, Rhea,
Mm-hmm.
do you remember what your first meal was?
I don't, because I didn't eat for a couple days. Yeah. I got out on ISR, which is intense supervised release. And my ISR agents, I thought they were going to come show up right away when I got out, and they didn't come for a week. So I just didn't know what to do. So I'm like stuck in a house with my daughter and my cousin who I was staying with, and I'm just like staring out the window like, are they coming? When are they coming? And my anxiety got the best of me. So I don't even remember what I ate first, because I lost, I think, like 8-10 pounds when I first got out, because I was just anxious. Like I didn't, I couldn't leave because I have to get approval to leave my house. So I was just stuck in there trying to adjust to being a mom, right fresh out the doors of prison. And and nobody in my house understood what I was going through.
How long do you think it took to break that, to come to a sense of normalcy, I guess?
Still working on it.
I'm still working on it, yeah. I would say things have gotten a lot better, and I think I've gotten in the groove of things, but I like to be in a stable situation. Like I like to know what I'm doing day to day. I like to have a schedule, because when I get alone or when, things are kind of, I tend to get depressed. And yeah.
So very happy to hear that you're working and you're still reaching your goals.
Thank you.
Congratulations on yourself.
Thank you.
Erick, when you first re-entered society, were there any pleasures simple little life pleasures, little things that you didn't realize you enjoyed?
Yeah, just smelling the roses, man. I got out, I was like, what's all that noise? It was birds tweeting. What is that? It's birds. You know what I mean? Just normal stuff. But when I left prison, I left prison running. My feet, I left. My feet hit the ground, man. I was out of there. In prison, I embraced prison. Why? Because number one, when I got there, I said, this is what I get, right? This is what I get. I wasn't raised like this. I did this. I'm guilty. This is what I get. But I also use prison as an opportunity to change. So everything for me that's going for me now started in prison. So I started doing the time rather than the time doing me. The little pleasures, let me tell you this. Before I went to prison, I used to barbecue all the time. Do my ribs pretty good. But I used to drink. I wouldn't barbecue until I was half drunk. It was part of barbecuing. So I get out of prison, and since this day I got out of prison in 2011, since that time I've ever drank or used no drugs. Mind you, prior to that I'd smoked crack for 25 years and I've been to 14 treatments. I left prison 2011, none of that. But the hardest thing for me, and I don't think I could do it for a year, was barbecue, because I was so used to having a gallon of brandy when I fired the grill up. It was all a process, and I'm all fired up, and I'm looking at the grill like, shoot, I'm not touching that, because I identified it with getting high, and I knew I wasn't going to get high no more. So it probably took me over at least a minimum of, I don't know, a year before I could even put charcoal on the grill and fire up a grill again. Oh. I couldn't do it. Another habit that I took from prison that I still have is eating fast.
Yes.
I eat
15
fast.
minutes.
I eat fast because you get your tray, you sit down, and it's constantly people coming in and come out. It's like a cycle, and it's not like it's a whole bunch of food like you need 20 minutes to eat, but you might not be done and you gotta go. It's like, no, you gotta move because it's a cycle and it's, they come, it's like a snake and you gotta go and somebody sits down, you get up, somebody sits down, they just keep it going. But to this day, I eat fast and I'm trying to, and I'm just not conscious of it. My wife would tell me, did you taste it? Did you eat? I was like, I don't know. Eating's like a process. You eat and then you go do what you got to do. So it's almost like I don't sit to enjoy it. I do it because that's what you do. You eat it, get it done, and go. Yeah. And I still got that habit to this day.
Wow,
it's crazy.
I'm going to go back to Ria when you're talking about getting out and experiencing the type of mental health struggles that you were experiencing, and I'm curious, in those first few days and weeks back being home, what services were available for you? Was there anything available for you that you could pick up the phone and say, I'm having a problem here and I need to talk to somebody?
I had no idea, and nobody offered anything to me, which is what brought me to getting my BA in psychology, because it was. Thank you. It was, I came from a family that didn't believe in that. They would say, nothing's wrong with you. You'll be all right. Go take some Tylenol or something. I don't know. I'm being serious though. Like I think one of the things I remember my dad telling me is, the only thing that's wrong with you is what you think is wrong with you. And that stuck with me. So I didn't even acknowledge it or tell anyone like what I was dealing with. And nobody asked either. Like, I'm going to see my PO or my agents or whomever. Nobody ever asked. You know what they ask you? Did you find a job? Did you find a house? Are you getting high? They don't ask, are you okay?
It's facts.
How's your mental health? You don't get asked any of. I didn't get asked any of those questions. So I went on and on suffering. Yes, I got a job. Yes, I was sober. I did all the things right. I actually got a job like 2 weeks after I got out. I was making like $7 an hour, but I wasn't complaining. I was just happy to have that and be out and be working and moving forward and volunteering and getting in the community and building community and all of that. But nobody ever asked me, was I okay? And then I started drinking, which I was never a drinker. And I got violated because I was honest. With my PO, I was like, yeah, I got a DUI. And she was like so confused, like, well, I don't understand. You've been doing good, and like, what happened? And I'm like, I don't know, like, but I'm struggling. Which she said, okay, well, I gotta put this violation in, but I'll put in for a restructure. And I said, I think I need to go back to treatment. And I went to, because CIP is also a treatment. They focus a lot on, getting down to your core beliefs and things like that.
I'm sorry, what is CIP?
It's Challenge Incarceration Program. So it's like a boot camp style program for folks that have nonviolent offenses that are in the Minnesota DOC. And so it offers you opportunity to get time cut off of your sentence, meaning the time that you're inside, and then you just do all. So for me, I got a sentence of 7.5 years. I did 2 years incarcerated, and then I did the rest of my time on parole.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what happened. I ended up getting a DUI, which I did fight, and it got dropped down. But I went to Park Avenue Women's Center, where they had where they dealt with co-occurring disorders, so mental health and SUD. And in that program, I was able to talk about some things, about the trauma that I had, also from before prison, but then the trauma that I suffered while in prison. Because being in prison itself is traumatic. Being locked in a room that you can't get out of is very traumatic. And I guess I didn't realize that. It just didn't hit me, and nobody asked me. So I just kind of kept going on like, nothing's wrong with me, nothing's wrong with me. And I have all this pressure to do all these things right away, but no support in that way. And, with my mental health. So like I said before, that's what pushed me to go to school and learn more about psychology and find the resources. So I did my internship with Mental Health Minnesota, and a part of that was to give people resources on like a warm line. So I learned about, different crisis interventions and treatment centers and lots of different things. And I brought that back to my community, and I shared that with them. So just in case anyone else was suffering the way I was, I'm going to check on you and say, are you okay?
Mm-hmm. We were, before the broadcast tonight, we were, Antonio and you, we were both kind of discussing a little bit of that. And Antonio, I want to ask you again about something you said about the importance for men to receive some type of mental health counseling that counteracts the type of atmosphere that you dealt with in prison. Can we tell me a little bit more tell us about your experience with that?
For sure. Well, I mean, when we come home, we're looking for a foundation. We're looking for the resources that we don't have, right? And a lot of the times we're looking for those resources under duress, in a crisis state, right? And the crisis and the fear that is lingering, I'll say for me, and I think for most that I've talked to, it's not the fear of failing, it's the fear of what'll happen if they don't get the job. They're going back to prison. Mm-hmm. What'll happen if they don't fulfill the mandate, the treatment mandate? They're going back to prison. Yeah. Right? So that's the motivating factor for people to get connected with a lot of these things, which is absurd to me, which it's messed up, right? But it's our system, right? But for me, and why I said we need to have resources that do not mirror the same system that we were under, is because everything is punitive in that system. Everything is about looking at my trauma and my response to my trauma as a criminal behavior. It's trying to really, it's not about rehabilitation. It's indoctrinating me into believing that the things that happen to me and that are happening to me while I'm in prison and me responding to it is wrong, is bad. How can you put me in a situation where someone will try to take from me if I am my normal, kind self, and I have to defend myself, and then I get punished for that, and then told I'm this bad person who's never changed, but I'm just doing anything you would do if you were in the same situation, the same thing the government does, right? So in the sense of like help and resources, mental resources and all of those things, I need a psychologist, I need a therapist, I need someone who's gonna talk to me in a way that they would talk to their child, that they would talk to their spouse, that they would talk to their brother, their sister, with that same level of care and concern. You have to show me that me exposing my deepest, darkest things that are keeping me from having a full experience of life, and therefore how I respond to the world and how I navigate it. I need you to show me that it's okay, that I'm safe here, that I can talk about these things, and you're going to respond in a way that is not damning, but is questioning. Well, wow. Validating. Wow, I'm sorry that you're feeling that way. Can we talk about what led to some of those things? What are the root causes? My experience with a mental health care professional inside of prison was she walked by me while I was in a cage, literal cage, doing my recreation time and while I was in segregation. And she had a clipboard, and she come to my cage and said, would I like to speak to mental health care services? And I said, yes. And she stood there and said, well, go ahead and talk. And I said, mind you, it's men on each side of me in these cages doing push-ups, pull-ups, spitting, talking, cursing. I said, yeah, never mind. So we need something other than that, is what I kind of meant. You know?
Right.
And I also want to mention too, things are set up for you. Like you maybe potentially get your ID before you leave. You got, health insurance on the way out the door. But I think it's lost that, there's no resources for mental health support. Or why can't people get, resources for a therapist before they walk out the door of prison? Like, where is that part? Like that, they give you all these things about how to go get jobs, and you need to go meet with this person so they can, help you do your resume. But there's nothing for mental health, even though people are literally about to leave, like he said, a cage and go out into this big world. Right. That's a hard transition with nobody there to support you. If that's what you want, I mean, at least give it as an option and have it set up for them so that they can talk to somebody right when they get to the other side.
Right.
Thank you both, Antonio and Ria, for sharing that. Thank you. Absolutely. Over to David now. You work as a substance use counselor at RS Eden, correct?
Correct.
Correct. What's the difference, or what's different about counseling people who are coming out of incarceration?
Well, I would say the trust factor. A lot of brothers, when they are released from prison, have a real tough time with trust. And also, I would say just understanding that the prison rules do not apply in the world.
Facts.
When you have a disagreement with someone over something small, it doesn't have to escalate into this, this thing that you would, in prison, you may have to, that might result in someone getting hurt, seriously hurt. However, in the world now, you don't have to react that way. And just trying to get the brother to understand that that's not the way we have to conduct ourselves now. So just trying to get them to understand that there are two different worlds, and just because you've been in prison, that doesn't mean that the prison has to live in you once you're released. So that's one of the struggles. I think that another one would certainly be the mental health component that was so eloquently described by the panelists. A lot of I come from a family as well where mental health was not taken seriously, and especially among men. Right? You don't talk about your problems. Your problems are your problems, and all you got to do is buck up and fix your problems, right? And mental health was not something that was seriously addressed in a lot of communities. And, also, a lot of people come out of prison suffering from very deep guilt, not being able to forgive themselves for not being present in the lives of their families or not being able to forgive themselves for the conditions that brought them to prison in the first place. So those are some of the things that people struggle with when they first come out of prison.
Thank you, David. Erick, the next question is for you. While you were incarcerated at St. Cloud and Lino Lakes Correctional Facility, life continued for your partner and your daughter at home. You changed while you were incarcerated, but do you think your family was prepared to see this new you?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And my wife, who was my wife at the time, we're no longer married, the wife at the time would come see me all the time. Mm-hmm. And I told her, I'm not going to be the same when I get out. Mind you, I had mentioned 20 or 30, 25 years of smoking crack, 14 treatments. So when I wasn't high and I went to treatment, I always fell off. I always relapsed, always. So when I got out, when I was in there and I was letting them know it's not going to be the same, when I got out, they weren't ready for this, man. They were not. And I was serious about what I was on. When I got back into the environment, though, and that was a question that they asked me, they said, you changed, but you didn't give us time to change. Yep. I said, I did 27 months in a penitentiary. But the whole situation and the deal with that was they didn't feel they had to change. Yep. They were just living their life. I changed. I didn't expect them to change. I wanted them to adapt.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be the same. Adapt how? To this guy. At the same time, I had to readapt myself with them. That's why when I got out of prison, I stayed at my mom's house. I didn't even go home. Mm-hmm. See, I knew I was serious about what I was on. Then when I finally did go home, the environment was the same, and I was feeling kind of weird because I think if I stay here, I'm going to be smoking again because nothing changed. It's like I went back into the same environment. Yep. So that was kind of a struggle for me. I stayed anyway, grinding it out. I divorced her 8 years after I was out of prison because of the guilt of going to prison, the guilt of not really being there for my family. So now that I'm out and I'm getting it together, I was going to work, dropping checks on the table, saying, handle the business, and that's all I did for 8 years. And then after a while, it's like, I wanted my wife to really connect with me. The kids are grown, and my daughter, trying to reconnect with her, we're still kind of, to this day. I got out in 2011. And that's my only daughter named after me. So I was like, you my only daughter. I thought we'd be tight as,
It's hard for people to see the new you. It's like they're so stuck on who you were that they can't see who you've become.
And the man that I became wasn't acceptable. They were used to that dysfunctional dude. Mm-hmm. I was like, you know what? I'm just saying, y'all don't get it. So, yeah, it was tough. It was tough. It ended in divorce. It ended in divorce. And I tried to. And I felt I owed them. I felt guilty because of the man I was. So I had to stick and stay through the tough times because they stick and stayed with me when I was going through my shenanigans. Right. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And after a while, I was like, it got down to the point for me that if I stay here, I was scared I was going to get high, and the last thing I wanted to do was get high. I was like, I did that already. I did all of that. And I used that prison time to get my mind right. So I embraced prison. Embraced it how? I'm a change in here. And when I come out, I got 27 months of sobriety, and I'm going to get out. I'm going to stay like that. And that's exactly what it took.
Right. Erick, thank you for those answers. And Rhea, you had just started to mention, too, a bit about reconnecting with your daughter. And so I'd like you to talk more about that. I mean, when you were coming back, she was 6 when you re-entered?
No.
Yes. For me?
No, Rhea. Yeah, Rhea.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm taking,
I was 4 or she was 4 when I left. and
Okay,
then 6
all
when I
right.
came back, yep.
Let's talk about picking up that relationship again. What did you get right? What did you maybe get wrong in reestablishing that relationship?
Everything. I was only 18 when I had my daughter. I'm 36 now. So she's about to turn 18 and graduate high school and all of those things. So, thank you. But I was lucky, I thought, because when they're that age, they're very resilient. It was just like coming back and it was just like everything was good. And it was for years, but I didn't see the signs. And once she got to middle school and she got that, I don't know, maybe confidence to express herself, I started seeing the problems. She was suffering and always worried that I was gonna abandon her again. And I just didn't understand why she did certain, because I didn't know. I didn't learn this until, I went to school and started learning more about, childhood trauma. I had suffered my own. My mom went to prison too when I was a kid. So did my father. And I guess I just didn't see the signs. But when I finally caught on to it and I had the tools in my toolbox to, figure it out, I brought her to go see someone. And we sat down and we talked about it. And that's what she told me. For years, I keep thinking we're going to have that same conversation where you tell me I'm going to have to go somewhere for a while and then you just disappear. I missed my daughter's first day of school, her first day of kindergarten. And she told me that she struggled with that. So now I'm really trying to make sure I'm at every single thing she does. I don't want to miss. I don't care what it work, whatever. I'll just be fired if that's what it is. That's how serious it is. But I'm thankful that in middle school, when she got to middle school, that we had the opportunity to really sit down, because I didn't want that to start affecting her for the rest of her life. The way it did for me, being bounced around from foster home to auntie's house to this is, when my parents were wherever they were, and remembering, and I still do, I feel that what she said about wondering when you're just gonna disappear again, and so I've been very cautious and focused on making sure that she is successful, and not only successful as far as school and work and all of those things, but her mental health is secure, that she feels secure in herself, that she doesn't go out and meet the people that I met and do the things that I did, because she knows who she is and what she's about. So that was really important for me. So we're still working, through that. I think it's a journey, but she's doing a lot better, and she's getting ready to graduate in a month. So
That's excellent.
Congratulations.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to both of you. You've all had a very long journey in rebuilding your lives and, working to help others as well. This isn't just solitary work. Antonio, I'd like to hear from you right now. You started journaling in prison, and now you work as the co-executive director of Tone Up, a grassroots organization that supports people coming out of incarceration. Yeah, I think we can clap for that. Can you tell us what happens there?
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to the Tone Up team. Love y'all.
Right now.
Yeah, love y'all. So Tone Up stands for Teaching Ourselves New Examples to Uplift People, and we're a reentry organization. We help formerly incarcerated people come back home, get connected with resources, find the different, resources and connections that they need to have a successful reentry, yes, but a healthy path back towards living in a fast-paced world where things are happening, right? And there is no time to sit and reflect. A lot of the times you just got to act. We wanted to create a space where justice-impacted people can come together and share resources, share ideas, get trained up, learn, leadership development skills, professional development skills. So we're giving trainings on, teaching a person how to tell their story, articulate themselves, so that they don't have to shy away from their experiences, right? And they can control their own narrative. We do grassroots organizing, like you said. We're in halfway houses, transitional houses, connecting with other people as they come home. And one of our, bread and butter programs is, from the block to the ballot. We get in and we do democracy work. We teach people the importance of engaging in your democracy. We fight for legislation. Absolutely. We fight for legislation that directly impacts us and our communities. So Restore the Vote, a law that, gave 55,000 people, that's right, their right to vote back in Minnesota, 2023. We were on the ground knocking doors, making phone calls, tabling at events. In the cold, the heat, we're outside and we're talking to our people. And what's significant about it is not the fact that we're getting people excited about democracy, but we're building relationships. We're doing it in a way that's different than what anyone else is doing it out here. It's not transactional. We're not knocking on their doors, between those GOTV times, and then they don't see us anymore. We're outside and we're connecting with them. We're inviting them to events that we have throughout the year. We're sitting down with people and checking in on them and connecting them with real resources. So that's what we're doing with Tone Up. It's about creating a system where we're our own liberators, we're our own help, our own success, our own everything, right?
Right.
Nice.
Thank you. Antonio, thank you. And Ria, since your reentry, you've become a community advocate, volunteering and helping people navigate substance use and mental health care. But I'm curious about your perspective of what are some of the holes that are still in that safety net, and how can it work better for people?
So I've kind of done a full circle here. In 2020, I helped recreate the Ombuds for Corrections. Thank you. So it was, helping get that office started, and I was an investigator there, and actually got to go back in the prisons and find, some of the issues that there are lots of issues, but some of the issues, and help, change policies and make recommendations to change more policies. I'll just put it like that. And then moved in, after about 2.5 years, I moved into working with programs that work with women who are in recovery, and making sure that they have funding so that they can bring their children with them if need to when they do enter these programs. And when you talk about holes, the one thing that I've been trying to do for years now is get these two things to connect. So SUD, incarceration, reentry, I feel like there's so many missed opportunities because people don't see that they go hand in hand. It's sometimes a straight path, but the systems, they don't talk to each other a lot of the time. So I've been trying to loop them, around. So recently I just graduated with my master's degree in public administration. Thank you. And so I went from psychology to public administration. And I'm trying to figure out how to do these things. How do we communicate better? How do we make sure that there needs to be, if you're struggling with this, then more than likely you're going to be struggling with this and this. And if you're struggling with this, you may end up incarcerated at some point. So how do we stop that from happening? So I'm trying to get more people to see that. And one of the ways I do that is getting out in the community and talking to folks. And I'm hoping that more people, I know, Antonio, I know you do your thing, but more people can get out here and have these conversations and prevent these things before they even get to that point. Talk to the kids.
That part.
What's going on? How can we help before it gets to that point? So more preventative measures.
Right.
Nice.
Right.
Nice.
We are having such a great conversation, and we want to we still have a lot of great information to get to. Excuse me. I just want to get to reentry court is another service that's available, and I want to talk. Let's ask Erick. You do some volunteering. You work with reentry court. First, how does that impact? What are some of the results you've seen of your work in reentry court? I want to ask you that, and then I want to ask James the same question.
Okay, what I've seen lives be saved, literally. The reentry court, first off, let me send a shout out to my Kingsman Project family from all around the country. And I got to send a shout out to my wife, who's not here, I don't think, who is a partner in our nonprofit. I don't know if she's here, I can't see. But let me tell you about reentry court. Reentry court is a real good program, and it's for high-risk offenders. So I had the opportunity to be a mentor in that program. So what I do is just helped. A lot of the struggles that these guys were talking about is what I address. Guys, we help men, and my wife work with the women get reacclimated into the community, help them with whatever they're trying to do. So it's almost like when we're mentoring, like when I'm mentoring, I call it customized because everybody different. But we're able to help people who is normally had a criminal lifestyle all of their lives come out, and then when they come out to the Fed system as considered high risk, we're able to work with them, just help them reacclimate, help them with whatever they want to do, jobs. I work one-on-one. That one-on-one really gets serious because now we can talk like he was talking about. You know, I kind of know the struggles that they're going through. Address them. Mental health is huge. The mental health part, you know, even to get the conversation. But the biggest piece about it is I just try to build relationships and that trust factor like he was talking about. Once we get past that, I tell my story just like my man at the end was talking about. And once they see I can relate to what they're going through,
Right.
it opens the door, and I just help them any way I can to get where they're going.
Right. James, some results from reentry court. What are some of the things that you see?
Yeah, you know, this was reentry court in the District of Minnesota Federal Courts. It was started in 2015, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention Judges Donovan F. Frank and Susan R. Nelson for being sort of the leadership that made all that happen. You know, change is difficult. People are resistant. Institutions are even more so. So it took some courage and imagination to get this off the ground. You know, Erick has talked a little bit about, you know, the impacts on people and their sort of lived lives that I think is the point of your question. But I do want to mention, sort of above and beyond that I think the importance of the reentry court program here, you know, that is its reason to be, that's its purpose, and I think we do it well. But I think there's some value that it provides that goes beyond that. It's important to this conversation. I mean, three of the things that I think about when I talk about the impact of the federal reentry court program is one that, you know, it is on the front lines. And part of that model is to try to break down some of those walls of communication that have inhibited collaboration and progress at the rate that we would all hope for. You know, we're bringing together judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, probation officers, civil attorneys. We're trying to think as comprehensively as possible so that we can get past this sort of notion of siloing issues without paying attention to the big picture. I also think that the reentry court program is important because it's doing a lot to break some paradigms down, and that's a real impediment to change above and beyond sort of the individual one-on-one level. I think institutionally, it's an example of sort of creative thinking in a criminal justice system, particularly, where change is often overdue anyway and lags behind the reality of people living in the real world. So I think from sort of the top institutional layer, there's something very important about the courts being involved in leading the way. At the more individual level, how we run the sessions, I think, also demonstrates a paradigm shift. We're all sitting together. The judge isn't on the bench. People who come in for the first time, it's not uncommon for you to see literally sort of the fear of walking into a courtroom when all of their prior experiences have been terrible. Lives have been ruined, and just families destroyed and all those things. And to come to a space and really slowly come to trust the people that are participating in it, buy in, is transformative. And so I think how the design and how it's been implemented helps lead to the results that Erick and other people have been talking about. And then lastly, that it's hopefully an exemplar for other places to pay attention and adopt it. I'm not going to pretend that any one program is perfect. I mean, these are all creations of human beings. There's always room for improvement. But to the extent that we've got a federal court involved in dealing with people who are returning to the community from prison in a meaningful way, it's not a PR campaign, this should be going on everywhere.
Right. This has been such a powerful conversation. And again, thank you so much for humanizing and being so very honest to this issue. And we're to reintroduce our panelists. This is Antonio Williams. He's the executive director of Tone Up. You've heard from, thank you. Round of applause. We also heard from Maria Smith, a Women's Recovery Service Program Coordinator in a government agency. Applause. We also heard from Erick Washington, a co-founder of the Kingsman Project and a mentor in the District of Minnesota Reentry Court. We also thank James Becker, who is an assistant federal defender and also a federal defender in the District of Minnesota Reentry Court. Thank you. And of course, thank you to David Riley. He is a substance use counselor at R.S. Eden, an addiction treatment center in St. Paul.
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis.
Thank you. Sorry. And of course, a big thank you to all of you who could join us here in our wonderful little studio and who tuned in through our live stream. Thank you to all of our community members here tonight at the St. Paul Neighborhood Network. Lastly, thanks to the people at Sahan Journal and NPR News who worked to make this conversation happy. We'll see you next time. Have a wonderful night. Make your choices.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank y'all.